Okay, good morning, everyone. Sorry for the little glitch that we had. Okay, we're up to Perek Yud Mishna Vav, and we're continuing with the laws of Pruzbul, the document that is written in order to protect loans from being canceled by Shemitah. Ein Kaisim Pruzbul El Ala Karka. A Pruzbul is written only for a debt that is backed by land. That means that the borrower has to have some kind of ownership of land in order for us to say that the Pruzbul works. One way of explaining this is that the reason Pruzbul works is because when you hand over, when you give custody to Beis Din of the debts, with the power, because of the power of Beis Din, it's considered like it's collected already. Well, that's only going to work if Beis Din has something that it can for sure collect from, like real estate, like land. If the only thing the creditor, the borrower, has is movable objects, well, he could hide it all, and he would never have to pay back. So therefore, the only time we can say that the Pruzbul works the way it's supposed to, and it's considered as if the debt has been collected by Beis Din already, it can only be if Beis Din has somewhere to go to for sure to be able to collect the debt. And therefore, it's necessary for the Pruzbul to be able to operate. It's necessary for the borrower to have some kind of ownership of land. Im Einlay, Mishna continues. Now, let's say if the borrower does not have any land. What the lender could do now is basically give him. He can be mizaka him. He can award him a small amount of land. That means I can take. I'm the lender. I want the Pruzbul to work against the loan that you took from me, against the debt that you owe me. You don't have any land. So what I do is I give you some of my land. I give you a little bit of my land. As a matter of fact, it could be a tiny piece of land, even the size of a cabbage stalk. That's how small it can be. If I give you that amount of land, you now own land. Because you now own land, the Pruzbul can work. Now, it's interesting because the wording is mizaka, which they translate in the article as award. But mizaka means that I can transfer something to you even not in your presence. Typically, if I transfer ownership to you from something, you're going to be present and you're going to make some kind of act of acquisition. But it could be that you're not there and somebody else does it for you. And it's a benefit for anyone to acquire something. And therefore, even if you don't know about it, I can have someone else acquire a tiny piece of land in my property, me, the borrower, in my property, so that now you, the borrower, own some land. So now the Pruzbul can work to protect the debt. Now, typically the rule is that in order to acquire something from someone without his knowledge, it has to be assumed that it's his benefit. Typically, acquiring something is his benefit. The only thing is here, maybe it's not for his benefit. Because if he acquires the land, Shemitah is going to cancel the debt. Maybe that's not his benefit. So the answer that's given is that no, it is his benefit. It's better that at the end of the day, people are not supposed to use anything against you, not supposed to use Shemitah against you, not to lend you money. But at the end of the day, if it comes out that you didn't lend money and Shemitah canceled, you borrowed money rather, and Shemitah canceled the debt, it's a good chance you're going to have a hard time borrowing money in the future. And therefore, even if you don't know about the acquisition of the land, you would accept it. It's a benefit for you. Overall, it's a benefit for you to have the debt remain and not Shemitah cancel it. Nonetheless, if let's say you find out about it, you the borrower find out about it, you say, I don't want it. I don't want this piece of land. You can't force him. You can't force the piece of land on him. So you could give him land from your own, meaning you, let me maybe confusing here. The lender can give him some of his land, even a tiny piece of land, so that the borrower owns land, so the Pruzbul can be valid. He could transfer that piece of land, the ownership of that little piece of land, to the borrower, even without the borrower's knowledge, through someone else. But if the borrower becomes aware of what happened and he doesn't want it, you can't force it on him. And if you can't force it on him, Pruzbul doesn't work, Shemitah will cancel the debt. Next. So now the Mishna goes through some other scenarios of what would be considered ownership of land on the part of the borrower so that the Pruzbul can work. Now let's say this borrower has a field that's already been given as collateral somewhere else. Okay, so he had a field. He had a different debt. And because of that other debt, this field was taken as collateral. So he owns a piece of land, but at the end of the day, it's collateral by somebody else. Collateral can even be worked out in a way that the lender who now has your field as collateral can actually use your land. And by using the land, the debt is paid off. And sometimes the setup of collateral is that the collateral remains with this person for a certain amount of time, and you can't take it back until a certain point of time. So it can very well be that this piece of land that he technically owns, but is collateral by somebody else, and that other person may have basically almost complete control over it, and you don't. Nonetheless, you own a piece of land, meaning the borrower owns a piece of land. That is enough to make the principal valid. So even though the borrower doesn't have the piece of land in its control, and which means that the ability for Beis Din to collect it even wouldn't be that great either, nonetheless, he owns a piece of land, even though it's collateral by somebody else. That is enough to be considered ownership of land, so that a different lender can write a principal over the other debt that he has over this piece of land that he owns, even though it has now been taken as collateral by a different lender. Reb Chutzpah Omer, the sage Reb Chutzpah said, one can write a principal for a man over the property of his wife, and to orphans over the property of the guardians. Okay, well, that means like this. A woman can own property, she can own land and bring it into the marriage. And when she does so, the rule is that she remains the owner of the body of the land itself, but the usage of the land, the profits from the land, the produce from the land, what's produced from the land belongs to the husband. So now you have this man. He borrowed money from someone. He personally does not own any money. I'm sorry, he doesn't own any real estate. Doesn't own any land, but his wife does. So it's not really his land, but his wife does own the land. So the Reb Chutzpah says, nonetheless, you can write a principal for this man because of the fact that his wife has property. Now, this could be explained in a number of possible ways. It could be that we consider it that you own the land because you have the usage of the land. That was one way of explaining it. Another way of explaining it is that basically principal, as we said, is a rabbinic enactment. And they wanted you to have land, as we said before, so that it should really be considered like that there's something to be able to collect from. That's what they wanted. But at the end of the day, they kind of made it kind of loose. What does ownership mean? What kind of ownership do you need for the principal to work? Because don't forget, the principal works in the very least through the power, as we said, of Hefker, Beis Din, Hefker, that the rabbinical court has the ability to confiscate property. That's how it works. So, Beis Din could have done this confiscation even without you owning the piece of land. They didn't initially want to do that. They wanted to make it more real. They wanted to make it more in the sense of it's like the debt's been collected already. That's how they wanted it to be. Okay, that's how they wanted it to be. Nonetheless, they were kind of loose with the translation of what it means ownership. And therefore, although you don't own the land that your wife belongs, that kind of connection to land is enough to be considered ownership, so to speak, so the principal can work. And the same thing now applies to the last part of the Mishnah. Orphans over the property of their guardians. So that means it's like this. If let's say you have orphans, children that lost their father, and they're really too young to be able to take care of his estate. So the rabbinical court is going to appoint what's called an apitropos, which means a manager of sorts, a guardian. And the guardian takes care of their land. Now, if let's say you have a situation that a guardian borrowed for the benefit of the orphans. Okay, he borrowed some money for the benefit of the orphans. Don't forget, he's their guardian. He's taking care of their needs. And he had to borrow for their benefit. And they own no land. He's their guardian, but they own no land. A principal can be written based on the fact that the guardian owns the land. Okay, that's even a bigger stretch. I mean, that's not even, we can consider a husband, wife, one. Here, it's not even that far. Here's not even that close, rather. But again, as long as there is some association that the borrower has to real estate, to land, the Sage said that's enough for the prosbul. So being that the guardians are taking care of the assignment's needs because of that, and because that they borrowed money for the sake of the orphans. The fact that now the orphan's guardian has real estate, that's enough to write a prosbul on the loan that was taken for those orphans. So again, you have this manager for the orphans. He borrowed money for their sake. Now it's coming Shemitah. The lender of the money wants to write a prosbul, but these orphans don't own any land. The Mishna is saying that being that the manager of the one who manages them, which was the one who borrowed the money for them, does have real estate, does have land, that's enough connection of land to the borrower to say that the prosbul works. Perhaps it's even more. Can we understand it a little bit more? Because at the end of the day, it's the guardian who borrowed the money for them, and it's the guardian who owns the land. So there is an association, maybe a loose one. There is an association between the debt and the ownership of land, and therefore that's enough for a prosbul to be written. Okay, that is the Mishnah. Now we'll do the Sefer mitzvahs. Mitzvahs lois hasei shel hakos avaim. Prohibition against striking, rather actually wounding a father and mother. Now, if you remember yesterday, we spoke about a prohibition against striking anyone, and that was derived from the Torah's prohibition of giving extra lashes to someone who deserves lashes. So the way that this mitzvah, the way that we derive this mitzvah, see this mitzvah in the Torah, the Chavetz Chaim says like it's Shenemar, as the pasuk states, one who strikes his father and mother shall be put to death. Now, the rule is that the Torah does not apply capital punishment to any sin unless the Torah also gives a warning. I mean, the Torah has to give a warning. The Torah has to say it's prohibited. And then once the Torah says it's prohibited, then the capital punishment the Torah says can be applied. So here, the only place where the Torah speaks about striking the father and the mother is by the punishment. There is no explicit prohibition that says you may not strike your father and mother. It just says if you strike your father and mother, you'll be put to death. But it's missing the prohibition. Therefore, the azharasai and the warning against doing this, this could also work. This also could be derived from the fact the Torah gives a prohibition to hit. The Torah says it's prohibited to strike someone. Now, once the Torah prohibits striking anyone, the Torah, which includes your parents, the Torah now can say, and when you do that to your parents, chas v'shalom, there could be capital punishment applied to you. Now here it's very clear that this punishment of death isn't just going to come for striking. It comes for asa chabur. It means you make a wound, which means blood can out. But if he wounded his father or his mother, and there were witnesses and warning. The witnesses saw the son about to beat his father. And they went over to the son and they warned him. And he did it anyway. So the witnesses warned and they saw what he did and they testified against him. In the times where there was capital punishment, he would be punished with strangulation. Hiko al oznai. Now let's say you struck him on, let's say the son struck his father on the ear. V'chershin made him deaf. Chayamisa. Even for that too, you'll be liable for a death penalty. Question is, where's the wound? Where's the blood? The answer is, if the strike on the ear made him deaf, it has to have been that some kind of blood came out on the inside his ear. And therefore, it's a chabur, it's a wound. If a person strikes his parent chas v'shalom without making a wound, then his liability is like any other person, as we said before. If the wound is less than if the damages from the wound would be less than a pruta's worth of payment, then you get lashes for that. And if it would be a pruta's worth and up of payment for the damage, then the halacha would be that you'd pay and not get lashes. Let's say a person strikes his father's mother after they die. Pater exempt. Doesn't apply. The prohibition doesn't apply then. Next. Gemara says, let's say you're a bloodletter. Bloodletting was a very, very common practice in the times of the Gemara. Now you're a bloodletter, and your father and your mother, they want some bloodlet. Can you do it? The answer is the sage said you can't. You're making a wound. Even though it's for their benefit, still, you're not allowed to do it. However, let's say there's no other doctor to do it. Then he can do what they ask from him. So I believe this is a rabbinic law that says, don't do this to a parent. Even though you're doing it, you're not hurting them, it's for their benefit. You don't do something to them that would be technically a wound. If there's no one else to do it, then you're allowed to do it. The this applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Wish you all a wonderful Erev Yantif and a wonderful Yantif. Chag Sameach. Stay safe and all the best. Bye-bye.